Anuradha, you can start. Anuradha madam, we can start now.
ये बोल रही है आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Monica madam, you can turn on your camera.
एक सेकंड. Anuradha ma'am, please unmute yourself. Audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you are now audible. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Once again, a very warm welcome to all the esteemed academicians, researchers, faculty members, and participants joining us from different institutions and countries for day 4 of the International Faculty Development Program. On behalf of the organizing team, I am Anuradha, moderator of this International Faculty Development Program. Extend my heartfelt welcome to all our respective resource persons and participants. Your enthusiastic participation and continuous engagement are making this academic journey truly meaningful and successful. Before we begin today's session, let us take a brief look at the highlights of Day 3 of our International Faculty Development Program. Our first session was delivered by Imam Mohammad Barimov, former acting Minister of Transportation of Afghanistan, on highly significant topic, the absence of sustainable development perspective in business studies, curriculum development in fragile contexts. The session offered valuable international perspectives on curriculum development, sustainability, and the educational changes faced in fragile and conflict affected regions. The discussion encouraged participants to critically reflect upon the role of education in promoting sustainable development globally. The second insightful session was delivered by Dr. Amit Guleria, Assistant Professor at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar National Law University, on the topic UGC Guidelines on Academic Integrity, Implementation and Challenges. The session provided a comprehensive understanding of academic ethics, plagiarism regulations, implementation mechanism, and the practical challenges faced by institutions in maintaining academic integrity in higher education. We sincerely thank both the esteemed speakers for their highly enriching and impactful sessions. As we move ahead with the day 4, today's session are designed to explore innovative pedagogical approaches and the evolving role of education in building socially responsible and globally aware classroom. We are honored to begin today's session with an insightful lecture on the topic Contemporary Methods of Teaching and Overview. The session will be delivered by Dr. Monica, Assistant Professor at Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra. Dr. Monica is known for her academic dedication and contribution to innovative teaching methodology. Her expertise and experience in higher education will certainly provide valuable insight into modern pedagogical practices and learner-centered approaches that are highly relevant in today's academic environment. Ma'am, we are truly grateful for your gracious presence and for sparing your valuable time to guide all of us today. So now I invite Dr. Monica to kindly take over the session.
Thank you, Anuradha madam. Good evening to all respected organizers, and dear participant, and I am extending my heartfelt thankful thanks to organizing committee member Dr. Anup, Dr. Vikas Punia, Dr. Deepak, and Dr. Mamta Madam, and Anuradha ji, and other organizing member. Give me a 1 minute to share. My slide is visible to all participants.
Yes, madam. Ma'am, kindly turn on your camera.
Visible or not?
PPT is visible, madam. Also
Okay.
turn on your camera.
Okay. My topic of today discussion is the contemporary method of teaching. An overview. The basic fundamental of the contemporary method of teaching is the interactive learning. So first of all, I would like to interact with all participants, and I would like to know about the method used by the teaching fraternity. Contemporary method used by the anyone. It's a fundamental of the contemporary method of a teaching to interact with the student. Anyone can suggest any method of the contemporary way of a teaching during their teaching, and there are also the research scholar also. They will be the future teacher. Anyone can suggest any method of a teaching? No. And then I would like to start my discussion. Contemporary method of a teaching focus on making learning more interactive, student-centric, and relevant to the real life. Instead of relying on only on traditional lecture, these approaches encourage participation, critical thinking, and use of a technology. First of all, I would like start various type of the contemporary method of a teaching. First method of the contemporary is a student centering. Our focus in a contemporary method is shifted from the teacher oriented class to the student oriented class, in which the student actively participate. They ask question and take responsibility for their own learning. When a student interact with the teacher, they ask question and they own self learn about that problem posed by them. This make the understanding more effective and long lasting. Second way of the teaching is the active learning. Here the student engage in activities like discussion, problem solving, case studies, and group work rather than passively listening. In group work, word come in active learning. Group work make the learning more effective. Next learning method is the collaborative learning. Collaborative learning, student work in a group to solve problem or complete task, improving teamwork and communication skill. I am sharing my personal
Sorry to interrupt
experience.
you, ma'am.
Hello.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could you please start your camera? You are not visible.
I have already started
Sorry.
my camera.
Okay, you are not visible, ma'am.
Give me 1 minute.
Yes,
Now you are visible.
you are visible now.
Okay, now visible.
Yes, ma'am.
And next is the collaborative learning. Student work in a group to solve problem or complete task, improving teamwork and communication skill. Here I will like to share my personal experience. When I entered in a teaching fraternity, I used to assign a topic to an individual student. And later on, I realized that their performance is not as much as required. Then I used to assign the student topic in a group, and their performance was excellent and improvised by working in a group, and they learn more as compared to the individual work. And next method of the teaching is the inquiry based learning. Teacher pose question or a problem and student itself explore, research, discover, answer their own. Next method is the project based learning. For example, there are various topic in our teaching fraternity which we will use to discuss with the student. For example, in a recent time, we are facing various extreme event related to the weather. Then we discussed in our environment class that there are some problem in a climate system. Then the student used to set up a project and then research upon that topic and find out the solution. This type of the learning is the best way of a learning, and they have the long lasting and a permanent impact upon a student, and that learning will never be forgotten by the student. Next way of the teaching is the flipped classroom. Here the student learn at a home using two method of a learning present in a teaching system. One is the textbook and another is the online media. During the flipped classroom, first the student used to learn at a home by using these two methods, and then they not used to listen the lecture of the teacher, but they spent more time upon the discussion of the topic learned by them at their home, and they used to find out the practical applicability of that content in a real world. Next is the blended learning. Blended learning is the combination of the both method of a teaching, traditional method of a teaching and the contemporary method of a teaching. Here first the teacher and the student interact face to face, and then the teacher assigned the topic to the student by using the online mode, and then the student learn about that content more effectively. Next is the experimental learning. Learning through experience. For example, setting up the experiment, field trips, internship, and simulation. Being the member of the law fraternity, we used to take the student court visit, and they have a mandate to complete their internship of 1 month, and we also used to take the student to various educational tours. The purpose of these method is that the student will be able to learn more about their surrounding circumstances, how they can implement their funda in that society, that will be more effective. Next is the gamification. Gamification is that here the teacher used a game in which he can assign points and can also award any prize also to the student. Here I also used to share my personal experience. During my 10th standard, my Hindi teacher used to assign us a topic for a test, and he also put a prize for that. At that time, he used to announce a prize of 1 and 2 rupees. The value doesn't matter, but for us, that 1 and 2 rupees was a great opportunity to win that, and we used to learn more and more about that concept, and we go beyond our textbook also. This is the best way.
Sorry to
And
interrupt you, ma'am. Once again, there is something in front of your camera. It's not clearly visible. Please fix it.
Ma'am, there is some technical issues.
No, it's not technical issue. I think, yeah, you are
Now
visible
clear?
now. Yes,
It's okay.
ma'am. Thank you.
And this type of a game played by a teacher during their teaching will also motivate the student to learn more about the content assigned to them. Next is the personalized learning. Personalized learning based upon the ability of each and every individual student. In a classroom, each student has not equal caliber. Some student are a fast learner, some student are a slow learner. In this personalized learning, the teacher use the software, and that software prepare the question as per the need of the individual student. For a slow learner, the software will prepare the easy question, and for the intelligent student, software will prepare the harder question. And this type of a management will be helpful for the slow learner student to learn more effectively. And next is the competency based learning. Competency based learning
मैम
method of the
आपकी
teaching.
पीपीटी की स्लाइड्स विजिबल नहीं है।
मैम क्या now visible?
यस मैम।
Okay. Now is the competency based learning. Here the main focus of the teacher is to find out the ability of the student. Here the main motto is not the time spent by the student in a classroom, but the main focus is on the how much a student understand about a particular content. And the promotion of the student will not depend upon the how much time he spent in a particular class. Promotion of the student to a next class will depend upon the ability and the understanding of a particular content. Next is the use of technology. If we say that the present era is the era of AI, it will be not a wrong thing. Each and every person, either a teacher, either a student, we are all involved in using the AI tools for learning more and more. And these AI tools are more effective and enhance our ability to learn more, and the content we learn are easily available with the help of AI tools. Now I would like to put some light upon the historical background of the NEP. NEP क्यों? For the reason NEP introduced recently 2020 put more stress upon the implementation of the contemporary method of teaching. Before the NEP 2020, we have no focus on the contemporary method of teaching. NEP 2020 wants to make the education more interactive and more global education, and the main motto of the government to make the India superpower, and we can be a superpower only with the help if we have a global knowledge. And before going to the NEP 2020, I would like to put some light upon the historical background of the NEP in India. For that purpose, I would like to differentiate between the pre-independence era and the post-independence era. First education policy was introduced by the Lord Macaulay in 1835. First time he introduced the English education system in India. And the purpose of that English education system was to create a class of Indian educated in Western knowledge, so that they can easily move on their business. Next policy was the wood dispatch policy. This policy is also known as the Magna Carta of English education in India. And this policy recommended the universities in India, teaching training institution in India, and expansion of the primary education. Third one is the Hunter Commission. This commission focused on the primary and the secondary education. Fourth one is the Sadler Commission, 1917. 1917 to 1919. 1917 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Sadler Commission. 1919 to 1919 is the Hunter 1917 to 1919. This policy suggested reform in the university education. And the last one during the post-independence era was the Varda scheme introduced by the Mahatma Gandhi, which emphasized on the basic education through productive work. And now we enter in the after independence era. After 1947, India recognized education as the essential for the national integration and the national development. First time commission was introduced in a 1948 to 1949 under the headship of the Dr. Radhakrishnan, who focused on improving the university education. Secondary education system was introduced during the 1952 to 1953, which was headed by the Dr. A. Lakshmana Swami Mudaliar. And this commission focused on the diversification of the secondary education system. And the next one is the Kothari Commission, which was constituted from 1964 to 1966. This commission was headed by the D.S. Kothari. The most significant commission in Indian education history. The report submitted by this commission stated that the destiny of India is now being shaped in her classroom. And the major recommendation of this commission was the common school system, equal educational opportunity, and is laid down a structure of 10th plus 2 plus 3, and also recommended for the science and the moral education, and also recommended for the spending up to the 6% of a GDP. And the National Policy on Education 1968 formulated under the supervision of the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And the main feature of the 1968 policy was the adoption of a three-language formula. Three-language formula means the Hindi and the English will be the compulsory language, and in case of a Hindi and a non-Hindi speaker, it will be differentiated. And then the next feature of this policy was the equal access to the education, promotion of a science education, and national integration. Next national policy was formulated in 1986 under the supervision of the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. First time some content of the technology was introduced during this policy, but not in a full-fledged form, but introduced. The main objective of these
Change the
policies.
slide, ma'am. Ma'am, please change the slide when you explain.
Okay, I am changing. I have a just idea on a PPT. I am explaining more than the PPT. The main content of the National Education Policy 1986 was to remove the disparity in education and improve the adult education. And first time this policy favored the women education also in our system, and also encouraged the vocational education. Some content of the vocational training and some content of the digital technology use was introduced by this policy, but not in a full-fledged form. And this policy was reframed by the Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1992, and now is the NEP 2020. Why we need for the NEP 2020? There are some challenges posed by the post policies in respect of the education. First was the outdated syllabus. Rote learning means just we are focusing on memorizing and repetition of the content. We are not concerned about the skill based or vocational training. And at the same time, the employability ratio was very low. Technologies are changing and we are moving towards the globalization. And this created the formulation of the comprehensive NEP policy so that we can face the challenges posed by the recent scenario as we are moving towards the globalization. In a globalization, there is a need of the global knowledge also. And then the NEP 2020 is formulated under the supervision of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the chairperson of the committee who formulated the national education policy was the Dr. Kasturi Ranjan, who was the DRDO director also. This policy put more emphasis on a technology, interactive teaching, shifted from teacher to student centric, and the main objective and main feature of these policies were it formulated a formula for the school education, that was the 5+3+3+4. These are the four figure. 5 stand for the foundational stage. Foundational stage will be of a 5 year, and the child of 3 to 8 year will be included in this foundational stage. 3 year student will go for the primary education and Anganwadi, where he will learn only to play and creative activity only. After that, the stage is the preparatory stage, and the child from the age of 8 to 11 year will include here, and the class 3 to 5 will be here. And the main purpose of this preparatory stage is to push the student toward the learning stage. But that learning stage will be based upon discovery, discussion, and not making it too hard for that. It's the purpose of this stage was to create the interest of a child in a learning. Next, third stage is the middle stage, that is of a 3 years, and the child of 11 to 14 years will be included here, and the class 6 to 8 will be the part of this stage. And during this stage, only subject specific orientation was followed. Subject specific orientation means the student can't switch their subject during the 6 to 8 standard. He have to retain the subject assigned to or taken by the student. After that, the last stage was will be the secondary stage, and this stage will be of a 4 year, and class 9 to 12 will be included in it. This is the multidisciplinary stage. Multidisciplinary stage means the student has an option to switch their subject. For example, student of a science can opt. There are some credit system which he have to follow as per the NEP. But my topic is the contemporary method, so I am retaining my topic up to that stage only. Multidisciplinary means student of a science can opt after some time the art student can opt the science, and the science or art student can opt the commerce as per their choice and interest. Same time, this stage also focus on the holistic approach of the student. Holistic approach of the student means the development of students should be the overall development. It's not the purpose of it to make the student just to cram the content. Its purpose is to make learning more effective, more long lasting, and to make the student overall development. It may include his or her personality, moral values, and education is included in it. The main motto of the NEP 2020 was to transform India into the global knowledge society and make education holistic, flexible, and skill-oriented. Main focus of the NEP was on a vocational training and the skill-based society. Now I put some light upon the relevancy of the contemporary method of teaching in NEP 2020. First of all, NEP 2020 shift the focus from the teacher-centric to student-centric. Here, the student will be only a guide for the student. He will only provide the facility to the student. Student will learn more effectively by its own effort. The teacher will not play any role except as a guide. Next, the content relevancy of the contemporary method of teaching in NEP is the integration of a technology. We have various tools of e-learning on a social media from where the student can learn more and more, and that learning will be more effective. Next is the NEP content is the multidisciplinary and holistic education. I already discussed about it. And then the NEP focused on the skill development. First of all, if we talk about the traditional method, we are not focused upon the development of the skill of a student. We are just memorizing the student, any content of the teaching. That was the sufficient, but during the NEP 2020, it is the main focus of this policy to make the student skill oriented. If that is student will not have a skill, he will not match his job, he will be incompetent during his job performance. So it become mandatory to make the student skill oriented. Next is the learner centered approach. I already discussed about it, that the student will be the main area of the learning system. He will be in a core and a nucleus of the system, who will learn more and more by itself. Next is the we have in a traditional system the exam system. That was the final motto of each and every student, that we have to appear in an exam and we have to score such number of marks. But in case of a NEP, there is a continuous and comprehensive assessment. Continuous assessment, that may be weekly, that may be monthly, and there will be a periodical assessment, and such type of assessment will free the student from the stress of the final exam, and he will be habitual to assess herself or himself. And the next content of the NEP is the inclusion and equity. The NEP 2020 put more emphasis upon the equity, that any student belonging to marginalized class, physically disabled, and belonging to any weaker section of our society will have an equal chance of a learning. There will be no discrimination between any student upon any basis. Each will have a equal right of education, and in NEP, teacher will be only a guide. About that, beyond that, the teacher will have no role to play, but he will have to use the provide the facility to a student, and the student will learn itself. Now, what are the basic difference between the traditional and the contemporary method of teaching? Recently, I completed the refresher course upon the IKS system. IKS system means our traditional system of the teaching. We learn from various epics, various mimajas. There are various more. They are providing us the merit of the traditional system, why we are using the traditional system of teaching. But today we are moving from traditional to contemporary method of teaching, and it is the demand of a time that we have to move from the traditional method to contemporary method of teaching. If we compare both method of teaching in respect of the role of a teacher, in case of the traditional method of teaching, teacher is the main source of knowledge. During traditional time, teacher was the dictator. He used only to speak in a class. There was no active participation of a student anymore. And in case of a temporary teaching method, teacher act as only a guide for a student. He will provide only facility to student. After that, his role become over. Next, role of the student. In case of the traditional method of teaching, students are mostly passive listener. They never used to pose a question to the teacher. They learn as much as the teacher dictate in a classroom. They never used to go beyond the classroom. And in case of the contemporary method of a teaching, a student actively participate in a learning. Teaching style. In case of the traditional teaching method, lecture based or textbook. In a past time, we only used to study through by our textbook. We never use the technology. But in a present time, contemporary method of a teaching include the interactive, activity based and a student centering orientation are followed. Next is the learning approach. During the traditional teaching method, we only focused on memorizing and repetition. We only focus that the students should learn only, memorize only the concept discussed in a classroom. But in case of the contemporary method of a teaching, we used to develop in a student critical thinking, creativity, and a problem solving. Word come the critical thinking. When I used to frame the question paper, I said the question critically analyzes the following concept. That was the question. The student were confused about these two words. What is the meaning of the critical analysis, ma'am? Then I explain the word, what is the meaning of the critical analysis and how do you write the question. Being a member of the law fraternity, we always used to, even during our research, write down the article or a section. We never used to analyze that concept. But the present scenario is moving towards the critically analysis. What are the demerit, what are the merit, what are the loopholes, what we can provide the suggestion, how we can improvise the following concept. These are the present scenario. Next is the use of a technology. In a past scenario, while we are using the traditional method, technology was of no use. At that time, technology was not there in such form as it is present in a present time. At that time, limited or no use of a technology used by the student or a teacher. And in a present contemporary scenario, extensive use of the digital tools, smart board, app, online learning are followed by the student. Today's students are so smart than we teachers. And the classroom interaction, in respect of the classroom interaction, traditional teaching follow only one-way communication. One-way communication means only teacher speak and a student will only listen passively. He will not pose any question. He will not actively involve his or her involvement in any activity. And in the contemporary teaching method, we have a two-way communication. One communication from the side of a teacher and another communication from the side of the student. This is the communication, and it means they are interaction between the teacher and the student. Both are involving and both are showing their engagement in the teaching and the learning process. And this type of a learning and the teaching process is more effective. And next is the assessment perspective of the traditional teaching and the contemporary teaching. In case of the traditional teaching method, more focus was on an exam and a final grade. But in a contemporary method, we have a regular assessment of a student, and that will relieve the student from the burden of a final exam. We are assigning the student various project, various presentation, portfolios, and during these presentation and project, they learn more. And during these project preparation, presentation, they learn more, and they will be that will be helpful for their assessment also. Learning environment in case of a traditional teaching method is only a one single classroom where we will teach. The student have no bothering about the outsider world. He will be habitual to use sit in a particular bench and a particular class. In comparison to this, in contemporary method of a teaching, flexible method of a teaching are involved. We are having various method of a teaching. No doubt we are using the classroom in a present scenario also, but out of that classroom, we are engaging the student in so much activities. For example, in case of a law fraternity, we use the student to take the legal aid camp, jail visit, from where the student learn more and more about any problem. What are the real cause of these problem? What are the loopholes in us present policies relating to these problem? And what are the suggestion which we can suggest for the reformulation of a policies? So this make the teaching more effective. Now the main focus of the traditional method of a teaching was to just to complete syllabus. The main fear of a teacher was to how we will complete our syllabus. But in case of the contemporary method of a teaching, understanding the concept and how we will apply this concept in practical, it was more focused, not upon only to complete our syllabus. And the example of the traditional teaching, chalk and talk and rote learning. And in case of the contemporary teaching, group discussion, flipped classroom, experimental learning, and e-learning. Now I will discuss about the various disadvantages and advantage of the traditional method of a teaching and contemporary method of a teaching. First of all, I would like to discuss about the advantage of the traditional teaching method. First, easy to manage large classes. Being a member of a law fraternity, we have a number of around 120 to 160 students which are bifurcated in two sections, and each section have around the strength of a 60 to 70 teacher. How is it possible to interact each and every student in such large number? So as per the traditional method, it will be very easy to tackle a large class. And then the next advantage is the structure and organized. In a traditional method, we can organize the student because the teacher is a dictator. He has the whole ruler of that class. So he can manage and organize the class in a better way. Next is the good for the foundational knowledge. The traditional method are only used for the foundation knowledge. Next is the disadvantage of the traditional method of a teaching. Less student engagement, means there is no active involvement of the student in a class, they just listen. Next is only focused upon the rote memorization, just cram karo full. You have a no concern about the applicability of that content. Next is the limited creativity and a practical skill. By the traditional teaching method, we learn not about the skill development. We are only just to memorize the content. Now, the contemporary teaching method, there are some advantages of this method. Develop critical thinking and communication skill. Next, make learning more engaging, means if the student will have the active participation, he will engage more. Next, sport personalized learning. Personalized learning means in NEP, there is a classification of a student as per their learning skill. Some are fast learner and some are slow learner. NEP provide the procedure how to tackle such type of a class where there is a different type of, and this is a sure. In each class, we will have a different level student. Disadvantage of NEP, require resources and the technology. First of all, to implement the NEP 2020, there is a need of a lot of finance and high tech technology. and same time teacher needs special training. If even we have a NEP 2020, there is a lot of loopholes in a teacher. They are not aware much about the NEP, how we can implement, how we can upgrade the credit system, how it will work. There are so many problem with the teacher also. So at that time, teacher also needs training to update themselves to the NEP 2020. Next is can be difficult in very large classroom. Reason, it will not be possible to engage each student in a large number of a student. So in a last, I will conclude with some word. Traditional teaching focus on delivering knowledge, while contemporary teaching focus on developing skill, understanding, and active learning. We have discussed both the pattern of a teaching, but only one method is not sufficient. We have to follow both the method of a teaching, and then the result will be the best result. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You are great. We are grateful for your detailed explanation of contemporary methods of learning and your enlightening overview of the history of India. History of English in India was equally fascinating, and you also clearly explained the pillars of NEP 2020 and helping us understand its vision for transforming education in India. Your discussion gave us valuable clarity on important aspects such as holistic education, multidisciplinary learning, skill development, and the learner centered approach that NEP 2020 promotes. Your expertise, clarity, and engaging presentation have truly made this IFTP session meaningful. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I invite participants to take part in the question answer session. I request Dr. Vikas Punia to allow the participants to unmute themselves so that they can ask question.
They are allowed, ma'am.
Yeah. So I request the participants, if they have any question, they can write in the chat box or they can directly ask question from ma'am.
There is no question in chat box.
Okay. Okay, then. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again. And now we move towards the second insightful session of the day on the topic teaching beyond the syllabus, integrating SDG into classroom. This highly relevant and thought-provoking session will be delivered by Dr. Kritika, Assistant Professor in the Department of Laws at Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya at First State Women University in North India. Dr. Kritika has been teaching and mentoring students from diverse social and cultural backgrounds for more than a decade. She is widely recognized for her constructive and effective teaching methods, strong academic commitment, and active involvement in the academic, cultural, and administrative activities. She possesses extensive academic qualification, including LLM, LLB, PhD from Maharishi Dayanand University. She has also completed certification in skill development and leadership from the Wharton School and received training in institutional and legal frameworks of the POSH Act through national level capacity building programs. Currently, along with her teaching responsibilities, she is serving as Assistant Dean Students Welfare and Deputy Nodal Officer at NCORD at BPSMV. Her areas of expertise include jurisprudence, philosophy of law, legal theory, and forensic medicine. She has published numerous research papers in reputed journals, presented papers at national and international conferences, received Best Paper Presenter awards, and has actively contributed as a resource person in workshop and teacher training program, especially relating to POSH Act and legal awareness. We are truly honored to have such a distinguished academicians resource person with us today. Ma'am, we sincerely thank you for joining this international FDP program and sharing your valuable insight with all the participants. So now I respectfully invite Dr. Kritika ma'am to kindly begin the session.
Thank you so much for this warm introduction and welcome. First, I would like to congratulate the organizers for providing this platform for such a wonderful discourse and discussion on such a contemporary topic. And now I welcome all the participants. Good evening, respected educators, scholars, researchers, colleagues joining us from across institutions and countries. So I'll start with my presentation. Is my screen visible?
No, ma'am, no yet.
Not yet. A second.
Yes, ma'am. Now PPT is visible.
So my topic today is teaching beyond the syllabus, integrating SDGs into classrooms in the age of AI, anxiety, and accelerated change. So first, I would like to ask you all a question. How many of us in the last few weeks have looked at a student and a bright, capable, well-intentioned student and quietly thought, these days they just cannot focus? Have you ever thought of it? And now here is the dangerous follow-up. How many of us checked our phones in the last 10 minutes? While being in the FDP, half of us would be checking our phones right side besides our screen. Okay, so this is a new notification we have. This is a new email we have. All of us are doing that. So perhaps the problem is not the student. Perhaps the problem is larger, more civilizational than any of us have been willing to admit. And perhaps civilization itself is struggling to focus. A few months ago, I asked a student deceptively, simple question, what is the longest you can study without checking your phone? She did not answer immediately. Let me be very frank. She actually thought about it, which itself told me something. And then she answered with complete sincerity, ma'am, is aeroplane mode counted as emotional growth? And I laughed at that moment. And then when I stopped laughing, because this line was not a joke by a 20-year-old something sitting in my class, but it was one of the most precise diagnoses of our generation that I've ever encountered. Think about what it reveals. Today's students are not growing up in a world of information scarcity. Earlier generations struggled to access information. This generation struggles to escape it. And perhaps that is why so many of them arrive exhausted in our classrooms. Before even the classes have begun, before even the life has begun, they are already tired and exhausted. But because human beings in 10,000 years of evolution were never designed for uninterrupted mental occupation, rather were designed for rhythm, for rest, for resilience, for meaning, but we have lost that all. We are so much bound by the screens at this in this modern world that none of this comes to us without actual deliberate effort. And perhaps this is exactly where I would say higher education finds itself. It's not a technological crossroads, it's a pedagogical crisis, actually, a human crisis, if you must. And the question before universities is no longer simply what should students know. It is more deeper. What kind of human beings are we actually preparing? And perhaps this is why these sustainable development goals matter so deeply and so profoundly to higher education these days. And because as SDGs, you cannot say, sorry, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Just a second, ma'am.
And because, can I
Continue.
continue? Is there any problem?
Continue.
Okay. And I must tell you this, SDGs are not mere developmental goals. They are warnings. They are warnings about what happens when societies become technologically advanced without being humanly balanced. So the real crisis is not information. The most consequential revolutions, they do not never announce themselves in human history. They do not arrive with declarations or disruptions. They arrive very quietly. With this shrinking attention span that we see around us, where we have normalized being exhausted, being burnout, all these things are normalized, and we cannot hold a single thought for 90 seconds. We have even concocted a term for it, which is digital dementia. The current generation is facing it immensely. And the world has actually changed very dramatically in last 20 years. But education, just cosmetic changes are there. There is no real change if you see it. We have replaced blackboards. There are smart boards now. We have replaced chalks with markers. We have projectors. Earlier, now we have LCD screens. But the philosophy behind the education, it's still the same. So, the philosophy is still memorize, complete the syllabus, reproduce in examination, move on. Fear is the motivator, content is the weapon, speed is the virtue in today's world, still when it is not relevant anymore. And ancient Indian philosophy described the mind in Bhagavad Gita. I think it was 6th chapter, where it says that human mind is restless. It is turbulent, it is strong, it is difficult to control. And by the grace of Silicon Valley, thousands of years later, empirically, it has been proved right. We are so engrossed with screens, we are so engrossed with deficit of attention, that this quote from Gita has been proved right. And now, the biggest of all, the artificial intelligence. It is very quietly, very seamlessly seeped up into our classrooms. It has not taken permission. It has not announced itself, and it's just there. Now, whatever academic caliber we used to boast about, we used to brag about, it has been taken by the machines. And the textbooks, the essays, even the plagiarism cannot be detected. It is so good. The AI is so good. But the education of modern times is facing a question which we were utterly unprepared for, in my perspective. And that is, if a machine can generate information faster, better, more accurately, and more comprehensively than us humans, what precisely is the value of education? Is it only the transfer of information? So I don't think that is the right answer. What do you all think? Is it mere transfer of information that is needed in the current times, or is it something more? You can always write in the chat box. I'll be looking at the messages and replying if need be. Let's keep it not a monologue, rather a dialogue. We can do to and fro. Anyone? So the future does not belong to people basically who can reproduce information. It belongs, if you see that the machines have already won the race, and it is going to accelerate from here onwards. It is not going to, go low anyhow. But the future rather belongs to people who cannot, who can think and who can do what machines cannot. What do you think machines cannot do? They cannot think across borders and boundaries. Within the disciplines, they cannot make interdisciplinary connections that easily. They cannot hold two contradictory ideas in the brain and have respect and still act wisely towards both of them. They cannot disagree with someone they really like and give them grace and dignity. And they cannot fail. This is a human trait. We can fail and we are allowed to fail. And this precisely is where the educational crisis has begun. It is not an information crisis. We have more information than any civilization in history. It's a crisis of judgment, of wisdom, of humanity. We are like Arjuna standing in the field, battlefield, and looking at Krishna to give us some guidance. We are baffled. And that is our role in the modern world, to be the Krishna. He never gave Arjuna any, information. He gave him drishti, the guidance, the direction to see. That is our main job in this world where AI is prevalent. So why the world created SDGs? So slowly, painfully, and I will say very much reluctantly, the world itself realized that economic growth is not going to save us. GDPs has made us prosperous. We have measured well-being and whatnot. More hospitals we have built, but they are all full of anxious people. And we have connected the entire planet with internet, and yet we have created the loneliest cohort of young people. The loneliness is rampant. And then comes the convergence, the frightening simultaneous arrival of multiple crises which cannot be solved independently, I must say. If you think one of them can be solved on its own, it is not going to happen. Climate anxiety is there. We have mental health crisis. We have ecological instability. We have digital addiction. We have social polarization. You name it, we have it. Different kinds of issues which are very much available only in this modern world, not in the previous generations, but it is there. And human progress without balancing of humans is going to be eventually self-destructive. And this admission, this act of collective honesty is what brought Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, 193 nations asked one uncomfortable question together: how do human societies keep progressing without collapsing psychologically, socially, economically, or ecologically? This is the real meaning of SDG. Civilizational survival planning. Can you prepare human beings capable of sustaining the future itself? That is the question that universities are supposed to answer at this hour. That is what SDG is. If we are not doing it, we are failing our job. Because suddenly the classrooms are not neutral places where only content is transmitted. It has become a space where the future is to be negotiated. We are at the crossroads where we might survive or might extinct as a race. So once you see that, once you truly see it, you cannot unsee it. And then we reach these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. 193 nations, and there is one deadline, 2030, and we are very fast reaching it. From no poverty to partnership goals are there: good health, well-being, climate action, quality education, peace, justice, strongest institutions. But in the very heart of it, you can see the SDG 4, quality education. Of this whole framework, that is what the main thing is. It is not by some accident. Every single one of these goals, without exception, has an entry point inside a classroom. You cannot escape that point. And at the very heart lies the quality education part. The people who created this agenda, the architects, understood something that we in this room always knew. even when it was not very fashionable or in vogue to say everything flows through education. We cannot escape our responsibility as teachers. We have to work towards these goals through our classrooms. Otherwise, there is no point. And if you see, the founding promise of the 2030 agenda is leave no one behind. So this is not a policy commitment. It's a teaching philosophy that we have to imbue in ourselves. This is why every great educator has always believed before there was language for it. See, you have to understand that SDG goals are not only policies or papers or some things to be discussed in the conference. They are fracture lines, and these fracture lines have come to your classroom. They have entered your classroom, and they are not happening elsewhere. You are at the heart of it. You are at the center of it. And every fracture line in society eventually finds its way in education. So these all have. There's no wall between the classroom and the world anymore. There is a student who's sitting in the classroom looking outside, and outside you can see the AQI is like 1700. That is SDG happening in your own classroom. When there is a gender inequality, that is SDG in your own classroom. So SDGs are the fracture lines. We can say SDGs are actually naming those fracture lines very precisely. Look at the SDG 3. Can human beings remain mentally healthy? Our students are telling us the answer is increasingly with difficulty. What kind of education produces thoughtful citizens? See, not merely employable graduates we have to produce. That is our central professional challenge. SDG 5. Can gender equality become lived reality instead of policy language? Every classroom culture answers this question every single day, and yet we are not listening to it. SDG 13. Can humanity respond intelligently to ecological collapse? Our graduates will either lead that response or fail it. Look at SDG 16. Can society stay peaceful without citizens capable of ethical, critical thinking? We are the people who are going to produce those citizens, or maybe not. So these are no longer policy questions to be debated at international conferences or just the FDPs. These are our Monday morning classroom questions. When we enter our classrooms, these are the questions that we'll be facing. UNESCO ESD framework. I heard yesterday's lecture, I think, or it was maybe the day before. So ESD was discussed, I heard. And SDG 4.7 increasingly define the purpose of education as global citizenship, ethical reasoning, sustainable literacy, interdisciplinary learning, and responsible participation in society. These are the points that we must remember as teachers and as educators, as the people who have the future of this planet in our hands. So now let me be very specific with this, because one of the dangers of broad frameworks is that they remain very broad. So let me anchor us briefly in two very specific documents that have permanently changed what education is now expected to accomplish. First is the Paris Agreement, 2015. 195 countries were recognized by that time. So it is a legally binding treaty, and it asks the global temperature rise to, to be limited below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The question is, you would ask, how is that relevant to our classrooms? So you must understand that we have to discuss this in educational context. It did not only change what governments do about climate, it changed what classrooms must do about the future. Climate action, SDG 30, is now a classroom mandate. It's not a diplomatic commitment. Whether we choose to integrate into our curriculum or not has made every academic subject responsible to the planet. We cannot deny it anymore. And then let us look at NEP 2020. It is a first major educational reform in 34 years. And the policy is 66-page long, But the essential argument, which can be stated in one sentence, is that Indian education must shift fundamentally, irreversibly, from the reproduction of content to the cultivation of the whole human being, to the cultivation of human mind and faculty at its best. And that is what we are supposed to do. All of us are actually trying NEP, to imbue NEP in our curriculums. Eventually, it would be a smooth run, slightly difficult now, but it would be. And it's not a pedagogical document alone, it's a civilizational statement, if you must. Education is now bound to produce human beings who think beyond their subject, their career, and beyond themselves. That is what we need as educators. So ESD asks two simple questions. What if education is not merely preparation for employment? What if education is preparation for responsible existence? And this ancient, traditional line from our scriptures that says, I think it is more sophisticated than most of the educational philosophies of our time. Ya vidya, ya vimukte. True knowledge is that which liberates. So it was simply ahead of its time by several thousand years, but yes, it naturally defines ESD at the best. This is what ESD is. This is most contemporary, most sophisticated know-how of the ESD that I have come across. Now I would like to tell you who were the educators who changed the world. Actually, some examples are always good. So let us step away from the frameworks, from the data, policy, language, this and that, and come to people. The first photograph is of Bhagat Phool Singh, and he's the visionary founder of the institution I have the honor of serving, Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya Sonipat. He was the founder. He was the person who made the education of women possible in a time where it was frowned upon. And for that, he laid down his life even. Consider the context in which he acted. He built because he understood, before the language existed for this, that the education is the first and fundamental act of human liberation. He was practicing SDG 4 and 5 even when there was no name for it. Then is Savitribai Phule. We are all, aware of the sacrifices she made, how she was rebutted, how she was made to continue. It was very difficult for her in those times. She gave girls the power who never imagined once. She made them thinkers. She gave them hope. They were allowed to imagine futures because of this woman. And then the last picture is of Wangari Maathai. She's a Nobel Prize winner. And in 1970s in Kenya, when she looked around herself, there was extreme deforestation, and she started giving little saplings and seeds to the village women and the kids as well in there, and asked them to plant. And the green belt revolution started. And the actual change was not about the trees that were planted. The actual change was that the villagers learned that we can make a change even if the government is not helping us. We are not dependent on government merely to bring forth the change that is needed. So that is the power of good educators and teachers. So that is what we have to also bring in our students. They do not need to ask all the time, what is the government doing? And they should know that what is my responsibility. This change may be slow, but it is cumulative, and this invisible work of yours will eventually make a great difference in the world. Now, these are the actual classroom practices that I would really like you to work upon. And so what does this all that I have told you about would look like in a real classroom? So these are actual classroom practices. You can use them from the moment you step in your classrooms, you don't need institutional approvals for them or any additional sources for them. The first one is the last 5 minutes model. In every class, I think it is the simplest intervention you can go with, in my experience at least, and it is one of the most powerful. So you have to ask, where does what we studied today would touch the world that actually exists? No hypothetical questions, no theoretical, but actually what would happen. So you have to reserve the last 5 minutes of one lecture every week for one question. If you teach contract law, ask how does it intersect with data privacy, digital consent, right of users? If you teach thermodynamics, ask them what does it matter to renewable energy, ecological sustainability, energy crisis. So it is upon you to correlate it with your subject. And 5 minutes once a week, no syllabus, no revision. But over a semester, you'll see that you would have built a habit of connection. This is no subject exists in isolation. You have to understand that. I come from law, and we say that our subject encompasses everything. Law cannot exist in isolation. Everything under the sun comes under the law. We are connected to everything. And same goes with every discipline. That every discipline touches the living world. No discipline is existing in complete isolation. Then there is stop teaching topics and start teaching consequences. You have to teach them. If supposedly we are teaching about artificial intelligence, so you cannot teach them this is only a technical system. You ask what happens to human empathy, to the market for human empathy, what machines become emotional, what if and when machines become emotionally interactive. If you have not noticed, so many of my students I have come to realize they are depending on ChatGPT for their emotional support. They talk to it like a therapist. So yeah, our subjects are all interrelated with human mind and psyche. But this technique might need more confidence, but it is very transformative. You can teach environmental law, and not just as statutes or regulatory framework, but you can ask what if rivers are given personhood, as it has happened in New Zealand, in Colombia. So what happens when it is done? So when you teach consequences, you are not really abandoning your syllabus. You are revealing why the syllabus matters. So this is a very good technique. Then is the create collision classrooms. What are collision classrooms? What do you understand by that? Any idea? See, collision classrooms are when you ask them to imbue the real world problems into the classroom. They are defined, the lives of our graduates are defined by these problems. They do not arrive pre-sorted by discipline. Climate change arrives as physics, economic, law, psychology, public health, political theory, and intergenerational ethics even. So when you see a single topic arrives as multidisciplinary topic, that is when you create a collision classroom. A law student has to sit with a computer science student to understand the ethics of artificial intelligence. A psychology student might have to sit with a student of physics to understand the psychology of quantum leaps. So yes, all these types of ideas can give you collision classrooms. Then are the replace assignments with reality observations. So when you ask them to write 20 pages on a certain topic, rather give them a live problem that observe this for 3 days, observe this for 5 weeks, and come back to me and tell me what happened. Because everything else is AI, everything else is on internet. So you have to observe document where you see the SDGs failing in real, observable, documentable way, and then ask them to track it. They can also track their own digital behavior. They can find one SDG failure in their own surrounding. So education here becomes lived, not memorized. It becomes an experience, not something that they have lived through the eyes of a book only. The future classrooms may look very different. Slow thinking sessions. You ask them to remove devices, slides, and speak for 5 minutes. So you can ask them, what idea disturbed you this week? So how do you do it? This is a very different kind of a model. Then are the SDG mirror projects. Find one SDG failure, water waste, food waste, gendered spaces, and ask them what small intervention is possible. They will respond to it. Then is the attention labs. Students often track how they switch, between various things and what is technology doing to human attention. So students eventually become researchers on their own. They learn to work on the issues that they think are closer to their heart. And then is the rotating ethics. So you rotating ethics panel. So what you do, you make a panel of 5 students, 2 students, 3 students, and they have to give 2-minute reflection at every lecture. So they stop being passive and they become participants. So these are all future classrooms where there is attention management, where they are aware of digital well-being, ethical disagreement, and cognitive resilience. These are the things that we should be teaching our students. Now, this is the 4D classroom model. It is one of my favorite things. So the first is discover. That is the first D of a 4D model. Help students identify a real world issue. उनको कोई न्यूज हेडलाइन दिखाइए आज के न्यूज़पेपर में and ask them कि where does this problem exist near us. Let them think, let them ponder, give them time to think, make their faculty brains work. They are not using it anymore. Everything as it is available at the click of a button and they are using that only. The second is discuss. When you create interdisciplinary dialogues, so that would give them another dimension of thinking. This is the second stage. It's not a debate. Here the goal won't be to win. Here the goal is discourse, discussion. It is to understand who is the most affected by the issue. What are the ethical choices? How does this connect to what the student in the next classroom are studying right now, or in the next building are studying right now? This is democracy in rehearsal, if you understand. This is how kids are going to learn that what a healthy democracy is and how it should work. Then is the design. That is the third thing that we have to imbue in our daily discussions. You ask the students to move from analysis to action. Smallest of interventions, smallest of policy, rule, recommendation, prototype, app, or even a legal aid awareness campaign, anything, a public communication strategy. They can develop anything. Let them give solutions. Let them propose new things. So then comes the document. It is the reflection, record, and sharing. What did the students observe through all these 3 things? What did they learn? And then document them. This documentation would transform an experience into knowledge. It makes thinking visible. Ask them to write it, to make PPTs, to make posters on it. And visible thinking can be examined, refined, built upon. They will be made conscious of their own thinking. This is the last thing. Assessment, research, and academic integrity must evolve. So the future classrooms are definitely, a thing of survival skills. We are learning to survive again as a race. We are now in a different era. So Whatever the traditional systems rewarded, the future rewards are going to be different, and the research methods are also going to be different. What is the most important curriculum? It is going to be invisible. Students learn from institutional culture, how disagreements are handled, how graceful you are. You have to walk the talk as a teacher. You have to practice what you preach. You cannot be fighting with your colleagues and asking the students to be graceful. It will not happen. If your university, your institution, your department is normalizing fear, students will come up as silent spectators of fall of democracy. If you normalize curiosity, intellectually alive students you'll get. If you normalize integrity into society. Students learn not only from what teachers say, but who you are. And I think after a few years, when you meet your students, they will remember you with what you gave them, not whether they were employable or not, whether you created them as a well-rounded, good human being. That is what is important. This is the basic philosophy. I don't know who authored it. We have even lost the authorship of this sentence. Tamso ma jyotirgamay. That is the ultimate reality of a teacher. Led us from the darkness to light, from confusion to clarity, noise to wisdom, information to understanding. This is the ultimate job as teacher, as an educator. This is what we are supposed to do in today's modern world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, your session was truly enlightening, and you beautifully highlighted that the real crisis is today is not the lack of information, but the crisis of judgment. And this profound thought has given us a new perspective on education and reminded us that teaching is not just about delivering content, but about shaping responsible, thoughtful, and aware, responsible individuals. And your insightful explanation of the 17 sustainable development goals adopted by UN was exceptionally valuable, and you made us realize that how important it is for educator to integrate these goals into classroom teaching so that students become socially responsible citizens and who contribute meaningfully to the sustainable development. So thank you so much for broadening us and inspiring us so that we can transform our classroom into a meaningful learning and sustainable development. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me. Any questions?
Yeah. I invite the participants if they have any question.
Hello. Good evening. Good evening, ma'am. Kritika.
Good
I am
evening.
Dr. Anu.
Namaskar, sir. Ji.
Welcome you on behalf of this Vista Journal, being the editor of
Thank
the
you so
journal.
much. Thank you.
I
Thanks.
would like to ask one question that we are making a good, you very well explained and how we can make a student a better human being and how he can achieve or contribute to the society or
Right.
economy of the nation. But
Right.
what do I think that is there any new policy of the government which is promoting these 17 goals, means to remove poverty, hunger, quality education, gender equality, clean water? You know that in our society we are not getting even clean water to drink. Means
Definitely,
sewerage
sir.
water is mixing with that, and no one is listening about all these things. So how we can say that government can help to achieve these goals with the new
Sir,
policies?
right in the middle of my session, I mentioned the Nobel Prize winner, Vangai
Yeah,
Maathai.
you
Yes.
say that yes,
Yes.
that
So
we
if
make
we keep
human not to depend
asking that
upon the
what is
government.
government going to do, we are not going to achieve our goal of SDG. We are equally responsible. See, the policies are there. I think you are from law department only, so we can say that there are policies, but the problem is with the lack of implementation and execution. The government cannot execute everything unless we are ready for it, and we are preparing citizens who are ready for it. As an educator, it is our job to teach our students to be more aware, of the surroundings that they are living in. If we look for the policies only, there are hundreds of them. But
So
are they,
can we, being a citizen of the India, we can criticize any policy or to
why
comment
not?
any policy?
Why not? That is the purpose of democracy.
Okay, but what do I think that there is no democracy nowadays? Even
That is a perception, sir. We went to vote. We chose
standing
our own
comedian are
government.
also behind the bar just for a comment.
That is our problem, sir. We chose a government of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Ultimately, it comes to us. We are the people who are choosing our own government. We can always topple down the government. We can always topple down the regime and find a new one. But we are voting on the basis of caste, creed, gender, this, that. Are we voting on the basis of the policies? Half of us would not have read the manifesto of the parties that we are voting for. So it's a us problem.
Most of the people know about the manifesto of the political party. And what do I
they
think
do not read.
that
They never read the manifesto.
no, they don't need, but they know what party are
okay.
going to what thing, and they know very well that this political party is giving to us that and that thing. And what do I think? Just 80, 70, 80% or 60% people like those things. That this should
Sir,
be happened.
I just read an essay. I am forgetting the name of the journalist. She has worked for quite some time on this pattern of voting. So she said, what is the most tangible thing that a voter received? It is not the policy. She received 2,000 rupees for casting a vote for a particular person. So that is a tangible thing she received. अभी पॉलिसी आएगी हमको नहीं पता. अभी उस पॉलिसी से मुझको फायदा होगा नहीं पता, और उस पॉलिसी के लिए जो 4 कागज चाहिए वो कौन बनाएगा वो भी मुझको नहीं पता. पर वो 2,000 रुपए मेरे अकाउंट में आ गए वो मुझको पता है.
This is because of poverty of the nation.
Again,
I also noticed that when there is something happen in the road accident also, that some oil that is oil tank or some fishery tank or some petrol diesel tank is collapsed, then people carry balti or buckets from their home and to start looting of that thing,
instead of helping the person who was
this
there.
Is the condition of this nation, that we are so much
where
poor.
80% of the population is under BPL and 60% is gaining ration, free ka ration. So why would you think they have the faculty to vote and think of democracy? सबसे पहली चीज आदमी के पेट भरा होना चाहिए. I think it was Vivekanand who said this कि before the brain the stomach goes. That is how it works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there is one question from Dr. Mamta. What strategies can teachers adopt to make learning beyond the STS syllabus more engaging and effective?
As I told you, there are there is 4D model, and you can always have classrooms. You can invite students from other departments as well, where you can have group discussions. You can make academic forums in your department where you invite every Saturday or any given day. You invite students from other departments, make them have a discussions. What is happening is that, to fill the NAC forms and to show that we are doing so good in our department, we are moving towards more monologue kind of discussions and less towards interactive sessions where students are allowed to speak, to, show that they have some thoughts or work on their minds. We are not doing that. And I remember an incident someone told me long ago. I think Upendra Bakshi, we have all heard of him. So when he was the vice chancellor of DU, so there was a great ruckus created by the law students. And they all entered his room and they upturned his furniture and his table and everything. And when the security guards came, he stopped them. He said the democracy is at work. Let the students do what they are doing. We do not have that kind of patience. We are not teaching our students democracy because we want fear in our classroom. So that is one thing. Let them be fearless. You should have respect, but not on the basis of fear.
Yes, ma'am. There is one more question from
Yes, please.
Dr. Deepak Punia. How can experimental learning suggested in the National Education Policy 2020 improve classroom teaching?
See, the word itself is self-explanatory, experimental learning. You can, as I said, SDGs are all game for this. You can ask them, you can give them a headline and ask them to work on it. See where this SDG is failing, where this headline is taking you. So that is all experimental. We are, we are producing, I think, 40,000 doctorates every year, give or take. And none of them is actually a very few of them, I would say, I wouldn't say none of them, a very few of them are policy matters. Why is it happening? Because we are so afraid of empirical things. We are so afraid of having new thoughts. And you have the future of this generation and this country in your hands. So experimental learning can be anything. It depends on you. You do not have to take permission for it from your institution. It is already in your syllabus. If may I know the subject or the faculty from which sir belongs?
Political science.
Political science. So he has the best, options. He can go with a single headline and work on it. Everything is political in this country, from poverty to food to trees to the electricity bills. Everything is political. He can do any experiment that he wishes to.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes.
There's no question in the chat box. Anybody else who want to ask any question from ma'am directly? Vikas sir, please allow the participants if they want to ask the question.
They are allowing, they can unmute yourself.
Okay, if you don't have any question, then we conclude the session. Thank you so much, ma'am, once again.
Thank you
As we-
everyone for the wonderful questions, and I loved answering every one of you, and it certainly gave me an insight. I can work upon more of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. As we conclude the day 4 of the International Faculty Development Program, I would like to express sincere gratitude to both our esteemed resource persons for their highly enriching and impactful sessions. Today's session provided valuable insights into contemporary teaching practices and importance of integrating sustainable development goals within the classroom, thereby contributing towards more inclusive, innovative, and socially responsible education. I also extend heartfelt thanks to all the participants for their active participation, enthusiasm, and continuous support throughout the program. Your presence and engagement have made this program truly interactive and successful. Please continue to join us enthusiastically in the upcoming session as well. In case of anyone faces any difficulty attending the live session, kindly do not worry. The session recording will also be available through YouTube channel for academic access and learning. So before we conclude today's session, I would also like to inform all of you that tomorrow we will have the privilege of attending insightful lectures by Professor Frère Dechkin, St. Petersburg University, France, on the topic practical data analysis and visualization using Excel and State MP. And Professor Tamim Ahadi, Al-Biruni University and Women University Afghanistan on the topic Digital Transformation in Mathematics Education, the Role of Online Learning. So we look forward to your continuous participation in the remaining session of this International Faculty Development Program. Thank you once again, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful evening ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam.